Evening, everybody. Well, in a court today in Stockholm, the truck attacker, Mr. Akilov, who's 39 from Uzbekistan, has admitted carrying out the attack and confessed to it being a terrorist crime. Remember, 4 people were killed, one of them being British. And since that attack, it's quite interesting that Sweden, that has prided itself on being the most liberal country in the Western world, that has pro rata taken in more migrants, more asylum seekers than any other country in the world, and have been pretending all the way through the last few months that actually there is no problem, the policy's been a great success. But boy, we have seen a bit of a U-turn on this, because the Swedish Prime Minister, Stefan Löfven, OK, he's not a household name, but he is the Swedish Prime Minister, he has said we will never go back to the days of mass immigration. That's what he said. He couldn't be clearer. My question to you is he right to say that? But perhaps, more significantly, does he actually mean it? Or is he, with a general election coming up next year, doing his utmost to con the public? And I say that because there was an opinion poll that came out this morning before this court case showing the Swedish Democrats on 27%. The Swedish Democrats, who have been absolute political pariahs in Sweden and who do have, going back to the 1980s, a pretty unfortunate far-right image, have cleaned up their act to a very large extent. They are now in the lead in these opinion polls. So is he right to say, the Prime Minister, that mass immigration has to come to an end? And does he really mean it? In fact, do any of them mean it? I mean, after all, we've been told since 2010 that net migration in this country was going to be reduced to tens of thousands. So let me know what you think. If you think he's right to effectively put a stop to it, then call me on 0345 6060 973. If you think basically he's just trying to con the public, well, you can text me at 84850. If you think borders don't matter because we're all world citizens now, well, tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC, and you can watch us live on LBC's Facebook page now. And I'm going to go to Jennifer in Lincoln and ask her, is he right to make this dramatic U-turn in terms of Sweden's policy?
Yes, hello.
Good
hello,
evening.
Nigel.
Good evening.
Good evening. At last I got through to you. Right, I definitely think he's right. And
You do, yeah.
Time that our lily-livered head of Parliament, the lot that deal with everything, with, like the Home Secretary, everybody. Our Prime Minister was Home Secretary before. She should have acted a long time ago. We've got too many terrorists. How many assaults in this country is it going to take before somebody realises that instead of linking arms, laying flowers, lighting candles, holding vigils, is going to cure everything? It's not. He's absolutely right, and I do hope that he goes through with it.
Well, that's the point, Jennifer, isn't it? I mean, let's face it. Let's face it. Immigration as an issue in this country has been going up and up the agenda over the course of the last decade and more, and that is one of the big things that Cameron got elected on twice as Prime Minister, was that he would cut net migration to tens of thousands a year, and it's still running, Jennifer, at 1/3 every year.
What about Theresa May as Home Secretary? She's nothing about it.
She did. Well,
she can't do anything about it now. She said another 5 years it'll take before anything goes down. They cannot carry on. How many jihadis are here in this country? They went to fight ISIS against our policies. They are not, even if they've been born here and they've got a British passport, they are not British. As far as I'm concerned, they are not. They have no loyalty to this country at all. What would happen in the 2 world wars, for instance, if the young men had said, we're going to go and fight for Germany. It's losing now, we're going to come back.
Jennifer, if you were tomorrow given Theresa May's job, what would you say? What would you do?
I would say to the Home Secretary, now, knuckle down, get down to it, and get rid of the scum in our country. First of all, as Trump has said, let's get America right, let's get England right. We're far too loose and far
when
too
you say when you say the scum, what exactly are you referring to?
The people are not having no allegiance to this country at all. They have no allegiance at all. They are just brewing all the time, working out how can we attack this country, how can we do this, The mosques are very bad, a lot of them, especially one in Luton is terrible, and the schools, I know a lot of them been closed down, but we have to tighten up.
We have to tighten up. Jennifer, I get the point. We have to tighten up. And I thank you very much for your call, even if that word was a bit rich for most. Andy in Cardiff, tell me, does the Swedish Prime Minister actually mean it when he says mass immigration is going to come to an end?
Good evening, Nigel. I think that he actually does mean it, but following through on it is going to be very difficult. I think within a couple of weeks, I think your pals in the EU Parliament will do what they can to stop him. I mean, if you look at what's happened today, within moments of him actually announcing this and making that statement, your friend Mr. Juncker decided that he was going to highlight the fact that him and his party were going to be against having face veils in the EU. I think that's to placate the Swedish after what's happened. And I also think that it's going to be watered down to the best it can be by the EU Parliament going forward, so that at least the Prime Minister of Sweden says, I did something about it, this is what we got, rather than him getting what he wants.
Well, the problem, of course, is going to be this, that relations with Turkey have broken down completely, particularly with the Netherlands, and I think the idea that Turkey is going to hold back the tide that wants to come across the Mediterranean, I think that's out of the window. I think if Syria does deteriorate further, there are likely to be a lot more people wanting to get out of Syria and cross the Mediterranean, and once they're in the European Union, Sweden will be told by the Germans particularly, you must take a quota, and whether that's 50,000 or 100,000 or 150,000. So, is this Swedish Prime Minister going to stand up to the EU and Mrs Merkel? I don't think so, Andy.
Can I add something else to this, Nigel?
Sure.
I know this is straying off the subject a little bit, but yesterday you were talking about Trump and Syria. You've mentioned Syria just now. I think that one of the biggest mistakes we're going to make with Turkey, with Syria, with all the other places that are currently harbouring ISIS or members of ISIS, or they're hiding there, I think one of the biggest mistakes Mr. Trump made was not taking advantage and making his presidency historic. That's what he should have done. He should have actually had that chat with Putin first.
Yes, Andy, I agree with that. I think he should have met him. And I also think the Foreign Secretary, when he was due to go out to Moscow to meet Mr. Lavrov, the Foreign Secretary, and probably whilst he was there to meet Putin as well, I think for Boris to have pulled out of that trip and just to sort of urge him a G7 behind closed doors that we put on sanctions was wrong. Andy, I'll be talking more about that at 7:30 after the news. And as Trump was mentioned, I must bring Trump into this Swedish conversation, because if you remember, he gave a speech where he said, just look at what happened in Sweden, and he was absolutely lambasted for everybody. Well, he has proved to be rather right, hasn't he? And it's a great Trump tweet here. I mean, whether you like him or not, these tweets are entertaining. Trump says, give the public a break. The fake news media is trying to say that large-scale immigration in Sweden is working out beautifully. Nut. Very Trump-like. And interestingly, Jeremy Vine of the BBC said the people who mocked Trump for his comments on Sweden last month will not do that again. So I think Trump really has been rather prescient on this issue. I'm going to ask Mehdi in Tower Hamlets whether the Swedish Prime Minister has got this right and whether this U-turn is sincere.
Hi, Nigel. I think the Swedish Prime Minister got it absolutely wrong.
Yeah.
Purely because this is what the terrorists want. And just like terrorists, this is what people like you, who peddle racism in the society, want as well.
Do I?
You support... Yes, you do. You support a nasty Marine Le Pen. You think she's fantastic.
I've been neutral. I've been absolutely neutral on the subject.
You do support her.
Do I? Well, why? Well, this is interesting, isn't it? So I don't sit with the Front National in the European Parliament. I haven't for the last 18 years. I know Marine Le Pen because we're both MEPs in the same Parliament, but I'm not an overt public supporter of hers. Not that I'm aware of, Mehdi. I mean, you're telling me things I don't know.
Well, he did say on this radio station about Marine Le Pen, it'd be fantastic that she win in France.
I didn't say that, but I did say you'd be a fool if you said she couldn't win in France. And that I did say, and I have said, Mehdi, to be fair, I have said that she's a marked improvement upon her father, and she's taken the party in a much more satisfactory direction.
She's still a racist, Nigel.
Is she?
She's still a racist.
Why is she
Her party is a racist party.
What? Tell me. Explain to me. Explain to all the people listening. Why is she a racist? Explain it to us.
Why do you think she is? Does she hate Muslims?
No, actually, if you listen, I interviewed her for this show, and it was played a couple of weeks ago, and I was very specific, very, very, very specific, and go to lbc.co.uk, and you can see that interview, you can listen to that interview, Mehdi, or anybody else that's interested. I asked her very much about this, and there is a prominent politician in Europe, in the form of Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, who wants to go to war against the entire religion of Islam. He wants the mosques bulldozed, he wants the Quran banned in the Netherlands, and he wants the religion to be outlawed. And I have to say, Mehdi, I find that unacceptable and crazy and a plan that will never work. That is not what Marine Le Pen is saying, and I really don't see how this charge... I mean, her father, you could make the charge, is racist. He said some things that clearly, overtly are. I honestly don't think you've given me one reason to think that Marine Le Pen is racist.
Well, is she not? Is she against burqa? Does she think that Quran is barbaric? Does she think that?
Well, I mean, she has not opined heavily on it, but she's worried about some of the latter parts of the Quran, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I'm not. Do you know why? Because if you look at the Muslims, I'm a Muslim myself, right? A tiny minority of Muslims are doing what they're doing. You're labeling them as a Muslim terrorist because what you really want people to believe that Islam is at fault. Whereas if they're terrorists, they don't belong to a religion, Nigel.
Well, the trouble with this argument, Mehdi, the trouble with this argument is this, that there are lots of people like you who say, not in my name, this is not what the religion of Islam is all about. The trouble is the people who are doing the awful things believe themselves that they are doing it in the name of Islam. And I agree with you. It may be a tiny percentage, but goodness me, look at the problems that it's causing, right across Europe. I mean, we've almost got to the point, Mehdi, where a terrorist atrocity is just a sort of everyday part of life that we hear on the news from somewhere in Europe, and we almost expect it to happen.
But it's not terrorism. It's not religion, though. It has nothing to do with religion. Have you ever called an IRA Christian terrorist? Have you condemned what's going on in Burma? Have you ever condemned?
Yes, I think it's absolutely dreadful, and I'm very, very surprised that Aung San Suu Kyi doesn't say more about it. Mehdi, I'm sorry, I know you want to have a real punch-up with me over this, and you want to call me racist and Le Pen racist, and you want to accuse us of wanting to wipe out the faith. We don't, but we do want to get tough with the terrorists, and we do want deeper integration. But thank you for your call. Breaking news, we're receiving reports about the German football club Borussia Dortmund. A bomb has exploded on its team bus after it left a hotel ahead of a Champions League game this evening. We're hearing one person was injured. I'll update you on more of that after the news. Dortmund were due to take on Monaco in a quarter-final. Right now, you're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 7:15.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
The social media storm over the appalling treatment of a passenger by United Airlines. I remind you their slogan used to be "Come fly the friendly skies," anything but, when they were dragging a doctor, literally kicking and screaming off a plane.
We were flying out to New York, sitting in the lounge waiting. We were flying Premier Economy. I get told by officials, sorry, we haven't got your seat. We have to put you in economy. And they told me that if I wanted to guarantee my seats on the way back, I would have to pay extra money to guarantee those seats.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
With Hampton by Hilton, now open in Aberdeen. Did you hear that? Exclusive online discounts for flights to Canada are calling. Book before April 30th and get an extra £20 off already low fares to Canada with Air Transat. Direct flights from London to Toronto now start from just £325 per person. Montreal, Vancouver, Calgary, they're calling. Book online before April 30th at airtransat.co.uk. Your Canadian holiday is calling.
Divorce. It threatens the things you've worked hard for in more ways than you can imagine. Your home, savings, pension, and most of all, your relationship with your children. Don't let divorce cost you any more than it has to. Cordell & Cordell is dedicated to helping men in matters relating to divorce. Call now on 0330 60 60 161 or visit cordellcordell.co.uk. Office in central London. A partner men can count on.
Here at the Claims Guys, we'd like to offer this assurance to anyone worried by the deadline on PPI claims. There is still time to make your claim. Our experts will work fast to discover if you were ever sold PPI. And once we've completed your free PPI check, you can then pursue your own claim or let us do it for you. It's your choice. Even if you can't find any paperwork, just text the word EASY to 60777 and let the Claims Guys do the rest. Text EASY to 60777 now.
The Claims Guys.
This is your captain speaking. I'd like to welcome you on board today's flight. As we're currently behind schedule, we're going to skip all the pre-flight checks and just proceed with takeoff. I've given the tyres a kick and I think we've got enough fuel to get there, and the oil warning light hasn't come on yet, so buckle up and enjoy the flight.
You wouldn't fly without the proper checks, so why drive without them? Highways England recommends you check your tyres, fuel and oil before every long journey. For more information on vehicle safety checks, search Think.
I'm James. I'm in year 10. Last term we watched a film about penguin behaviour in maths. But weirdly, it helped me get how probability works. Random.
The whole class thought it was random. I used a penguin documentary I saw to explain probability models. James laughed the most, but his grades improved the most too. I teach year 10. I'm Miss Ogan.
Apply now, and you could get a £25,000 tax-free bursary to train as a teacher. Search Get Into Teaching. Subject to eligibility. Selected subjects only.
Oh, the garden's an absolute mess. It's my turn to have the cross-stitch crew round for tea and Battenberg. I'll have to get a landscape gardener in and a wildlife expert. It's a jungle out there. We could be eaten alive by those deadly flutterbugs. Oh, relax, relax. It's Trust a Trader. Marvellous local tradespeople who've been tried, tested and reviewed. All specialists in their areas, from landscape gardening to pest control. Oh, visit trustatrader.com.
TrustATrader.com.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
We're getting conflicting reports about a bomb explosion. We first thought it was on. We're now told it's near the team bus of Borussia Dortmund, who are heading off to play Monaco in a Champions League game. The club say no players have been injured, but one person has. We'll find out more over the course of the next hour, and we'll even try and get a news report directly from Germany, if we possibly can. Returning to the theme that we're discussing tonight, the Swedish Prime Minister, in a dramatic U-turn, has said no more mass immigration, and all of that on the day when the truck driver admits that it was a terrorist act that took place in Stockholm. And I'm really asking the question, not only is the Prime Minister right to say that mass immigration should come to an end, but does he actually mean it? And Mehdi, who I was debating with before the break, seems to think that anybody that is critical of large-scale mass immigration is guilty of racism. And I'm sorry, Mehdi, that just doesn't wash. You know, when I asked you to give me examples of why people like me or Le Pen were, in your view, in your eyes, racist, you couldn't give a single piece of evidence. No, my concern is that I think that there is a growing tide of public anger. We've got new political parties springing up right across Europe. In Sweden itself, the Swedish Democrats now on 27% in the polls and clearly in the lead. And I think ahead of big elections, there's a lot of posturing going on. Andy in Cardiff mentioned the Islamic face veil ban earlier. We'll just sort of give you the facts of that. So the European Parliament's biggest political group, it's called the European People's Party. They're a Christian Democrat centre-right group. They, at their conference in Malta last week, have adopted a resolution saying, both for reasons of security and because seeing one another's face is an integral part of human interaction in Europe, they are now calling for a ban on Islamic face veils, something they wouldn't have even contemplated a year ago or 2 years ago. And similarly, Mrs. Merkel, you remember her? We can do it. As many of you that want to come, we can deal with it. And Mrs. Merkel now says that migrants must respect tolerance and that they need to become fully integrated into the German way of life and to respect it. So I think these are postures by the EPP group. They're postures by Mrs. Merkel, and I suspect postures by the Swedish Prime Minister. I don't think they're sincere. I don't think they mean it. Perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps I'm completely wrong on all of this. If I am, call me on 0345 6060 973. And I'm going to Jack in Bromsgrove. Jack, immigration levels into Sweden have been the highest of any developed country in the world. is their Prime Minister right to say, whether he means it or not, but right to say he's going to put a stop to it?
Good evening, Nigel.
Good evening.
Yes, I believe the Swedish Prime Minister is correct in saying this, because it's not the place of Europe, unfortunately, to house, the refugee crisis which is going on now. It's not our place to just house all those people. Unfortunately, I don't know quite what's going to happen. I don't know if he's just saying this for political points, because that wouldn't be the first time I've heard this, as David Cameron got elected in this country on the policy that he would get net migration down to the tens of thousands. Unfortunately, that's not happened either. So it could be political point scoring, but also I'd just like to comment very quickly on some previous callers of yours.
Do?
One of which said the mosques in this country are disgraceful. I disagree with that, because that's part of multiculturalism, which is a great part of the country that we live in. And your previous caller, which called you a racist, no, you sit in the European Parliament, you've been elected, you sit there, you are Eurosceptic, but that's your right, because you're a person. You can sit there and stand there and say whatever you want.
Yeah,
reason, of course.
Jack, this point about multiculturalism, it depends what multiculturalism means. If it means to you a diverse society of different people with that genuinely, means the food's more varied and life's more jolly, that's great. If it's multiculturalism, Jack, which means actually different communities by religion or race being separated off from the rest of the population, then surely, Jack, in that sense, multiculturalism has been a failure, hasn't it?
Well, it's the argument of theory versus practicality, isn't it? You can walk around London and hear how many hundreds of different languages speaking, but that's the kind of multiculturalism that I like, because I live in Birmingham.
Right, but as long as they can also speak English too, Jack, yeah?
Oh, of course,
yeah,
because
fine.
we live in the United Kingdom, and that's our language.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to tease that out because one of my big criticisms has been that so much government policy and indeed taxpayers' money has been spent over the last 4 decades actually actively encouraging new groups of people who've come to this country to live separately from the rest of us, and that has been a disaster. Jack, I thank you very much indeed for your call. On text, Nigel, please shut people down who say racist against Muslims. Muslim is not a race. What on earth was Mehdi talking about, says Josh in Bristol. People often claim to know what terrorists want. I wonder how they know. All we know for sure is they want to kill and maim, says Michael. And I like this. I like this on Twitter. Have they apologised to Donald Trump for being right, asks Anne Cooper. Not a cat's chance in hell. They won't apologise to him. And can you imagine Mr Juncker? Because before the mass of people started crossing the Mediterranean, I said in April 2015 in the European Parliament that Juncker putting in place the European asylum policy would be a disaster, because they'd drawn the bounds of who would qualify as a refugee far too widely. Is Mr Juncker going to apologise to me again? Not a chance. It will not happen. And it's worth pointing this out, because both the drivers of the truck in Berlin at Christmas and the one in Stockholm, both were failed asylum seekers. In the case of Stockholm, this man was given 4 weeks to leave the country. He simply disappeared. In the Netherlands, there are 8,000 people in the Netherlands who've been rejected as being refugees, and the Dutch authorities haven't got a clue whether any of them have left at all. And this is the point. And I believe that if you look at most of the people that are coming, they would not qualify as refugees under the 1951 Geneva Convention. They're mostly young males who are coming to Europe to make money, maybe seeking a better life. I don't blame them for that, but please, they are not refugees, and I believe that very, very strongly. But please, if you disagree with me, if you think I'm wrong, then get on the phone and tell me. I'm going to go to Callum next in Surbiton. Callum, is the Swedish Prime Minister right to perform this U-turn, and does he mean it?
Hi, Nigel. There's just a couple of points I'd like to make.
Sure.
First of which is basically regarding the idea that you're linking these drivers, ones in Berlin, London and Stockholm, to ISIS.
I didn't.
These people, I know, but people, the previous callers have done.
All right.
I just like to make a point and say that it's very easy to kind of commit an act of atrocity and then connect to a particular ideology. and what comes before the other. Is it Islam that promotes this, or is it people then appropriating what they've done to Islam? And I think that's a point that we need to tease out a bit more.
Well, in the case of Mr. Akilov from Uzbekistan, who pleaded guilty today to terrorist crime, he had very publicly in the past been praiseworthy of ISIS. So his position on this is pretty clear.
Yeah, and I understood that. The second point that I want to make is regarding whether closing off borders is that going to solve the problem, or is that just a reaction to the symptoms? Now, I think that something we have to consider is that closing off borders, first of all, open immigration is part of our identity as a liberal democracy. And part of our identity
Since when?
is openness.
Since when?
Opening borders to people that are in need, to refugees that are in help.
No. Come on. Callum, there are two very different things here. When it comes to genuine refugees, this country doesn't need to take any lectures from Mr. Juncker or Mrs. Merkel or anyone in the world, whether it was the Huguenots, whether it was the Jews, whether it was the Ugandan Asians. This country has always been welcoming of a really quite good number, serious number of genuine refugees. But Callum, that is very different, I think, to those that are currently claiming refugee status in Europe today.
Understood. But then it's saying, so shutting off borders, if we are open, shutting off borders, that I believe is going part of our identity as a liberal democracy.
But Callum, we've never had open borders until we joined the European Union. And for the first 25 years of that, we didn't notice, because the living standards, the education system, the healthcare provision was roughly similar in France and Germany and the United Kingdom and the Netherlands, etc. Really, genuinely open borders began in 2004, when we opened up to 8 and then 10 former communist countries who were very much poorer than us. I mean, I don't think, Callum, you can justify saying that open borders have made us what we are. It's a very recent thing. That's the point I'm making.
Understood. So, I mean, the issue, what I'm trying to tease out here is that what is happening with people coming in and attributing these terrorist acts to Islam, that is a symptom of, I believe, failed policy. And if we're going to go into that, we need to establish what our policy is much more clearly than we are doing now. And if you look over since 2013, Donald Trump has changed his policy regarding Assad 5 times. Now, there's no consistency within the leader of the free world. How can you expect there to be any real consistency with how we're going to approach the issues of migration? Now,
Certainly, Callum, as far as Trump's concerned, I'm watching very carefully what's happening in Syria. Rex Tillerson, and I'll talk about this after the news, but where Trump has been very consistent is on Sweden, and he's owed an apology. And Callum, I thank you very much indeed for your call. OK, so we're waiting for more news about Borussia Dortmund's bus. A bomb has exploded either on it or near it. We're not quite sure. Sources seem to vary on this. We're told one person was injured. We don't yet know any more. We will endeavour to find out what we can. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 7:30 and time for the news with Rupert Bartier.
German football team Borussia Dortmund has confirmed a bomb has exploded on or near its team bus. It was heading to the side stadium ahead of tonight's Champions League quarter-final against Monaco. One person, reportedly a player, has been hurt. Stay with LBC for the latest. The parents of a sick baby say they want to appeal after the High Court ruled that doctors can stop providing life support. 8-month-old Charlie Gard has a rare genetic condition and brain damage. And Russian President Vladimir Putin says the Assad regime was not responsible for last week's chemical weapons attack in Syria. He says the US intends to frame the regime with fake chemical attacks. LBC weather. Showers in northern parts overnight, otherwise mainly dry and clear, a low of 7 Celsius. Tomorrow a mix of rain and sunny spells and a high of 16 degrees.
LBC Travel. Good evening, I'm Andy Lake. Well, the M25 is queuing anti-clockwise in Kent from Junction 3 for Swanley towards the Dartford Tunnel following a breakdown earlier. All lanes are back open now, though. Into Battersea. Battersea Bridge Road is partially blocked southbound after a collision at Hester Road, causing queues back to Kings Road, and it's still slow coming over Kew Bridge in both directions after that police investigation on the bridge earlier today. In Hampshire, the A32 Wickham Road is down to just one lane northbound in Wallington after a collision there, causing delays on the approach. And as for the rail, Southern and Thameslink have delays of around 3/4 of an hour via Sutton because a train has broken down. For more real-time traffic updates, go to lbc.co.uk.
This is LBC.
Enjoy new drama on BT TV. AMC's The Sun is exclusive to BT customers.
I've done a lot of bad things in my time.
Pierce Brosnan saddles up a winner in this gripping Western saga. 4 stars Metro.
There's oil underneath this ground and I intend to get it out.
BT TV. Big entertainment, tiny prices.
Oh, the garden's an absolute mess. It's my turn to have the cross-stitch crew round for tea and Battenberg. I'll have to get a landscape gardener in and a wildlife expert. It's a jungle out there. We could be eaten alive by those deadly flutterbugs. Oh, relax, relax. It's Trust a Trader. Marvellous local tradespeople who've been tried, tested and reviewed. All specialists in their areas, from landscape gardening to pest control. Oh, visit trustatrader.com.
Trustatrader.com. Come to Galliard for brand new apartments at Orchard Wharf, London E14 from under £400,000 with estimated yields of up to 4.3% and deposits spread over 2 years. Orchard Wharf is only a 5-minute walk from the DLR, where you can connect to the tube in 2 minutes and arrive at Canary Wharf and next year's Crossrail in just 4 minutes. We're priced to sell and will fully furnish your apartment free of charge. Join us on Thursday the 20th of April from 5 p.m. till 5 p.m. Saturday the 22nd of April at the Crown Plaza Hotel XL, London E16 1AL. Call 0203 770 6300 or visit galliardhomes.com. That's galliardhomes.com.
It started with a letter in the mail. And then another. That's when they started. Soon you hear her. And now you're just struggling and panicking and just... How did it get so bad? The more you hide from debt, the worse it becomes. Capitalise has been helping thousands of people across London manage their debt with free, impartial, face-to-face advice. Get help today at capitalise.org.uk.
Watch The Sun, 9 p.m. April 18th on BT TV, where you'll find top-quality drama, kids shows and blockbuster movies. To make sure you never miss a moment, you can record all your favourite shows with the BT TV box. Visit bt.com/TV. BT TV. Big entertainment, tiny prices.
Recording functionality available with selected BT TV packs.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Well, the news about the Borussia Dortmund football team bus, where there's been a bomb either on or near it, has been added to slightly. We're now told that 3 explosions have been detonated in Dortmund this evening. That's all we know. As I get more, I will come back to you. The G7 were meeting today, and Boris Johnson, our Foreign Secretary, was pushing very hard to ramp up sanctions against Putin's Russia. He didn't manage to get any agreement. But Rex Tillerson, the US Secretary of State, who is just about to jet off to meet the Russians, including Putin, Tillerson said that Assad's days are now coming to an end. I don't know quite what that means. Does it mean there are going to be more airstrikes? I don't know. I hope not. Personally, I'm rather worried about this. And on the other side, well, the Russian Foreign Ministry said that relations are worse between Russia and the West than they've been at any time since the Cold War, which is pretty much what we said last night during our debate on this. And Vladimir Putin has claimed that he has information that the United States is planning a fresh wave of airstrikes in Syria, this time in the capital, Damascus. And extraordinarily, Putin has said that Moscow has also received intelligence about planned fake chemical weapons attacks, which would be done by the Americans in an attempt to frame Bashar al-Assad. Either way, however you look at this, relations are deteriorating very, very quickly indeed, and I genuinely think we should be worried about it. Back to the main topic of our discussion tonight, which is the dramatic U-turn by the Prime Minister of Sweden saying mass immigration has ended. Is he right? Does he mean it? Roy, does he mean it? Is he being sincere? Roy in Reigate, good evening.
Hi, Nigel. Thank you very much. I think he means it. Whether he can instigate it is another matter.
Yes, I mean delivery is a problem, isn't it? And as I pointed out, that what is now happening. I mean, we're not part of the Schengen area. We never ever were, thank goodness. But what the Germans have really tried very hard to do, with the vast numbers of people that have come, is to divvy them up amongst all the member states of the European Union with a quota system. Now, in the East, countries like Hungary, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, they just said, forget it. We're not interested. We're not playing your game, Mrs. Merkel. But I just do not see this Swedish Prime Minister saying that to Brussels or saying it to Merkel. So a lot of this may actually be beyond his control.
That may be true, but there's also a humanitarian side to it. Is there a differential between immigration and refugees? Now, I know
huge, Roy.
There are some refugees that may be bogus, but certainly in the situation with Syria at the moment, we will expect an enormous requirement for housing refugees, and as a country, or even as what is currently a union, we must do what we can, surely.
Well, Roy, you asked the question, is there a difference between immigration and refugees? Yes, massively. There's a huge difference. Of course there is. I mean, the classical definition of a refugee is somebody who is in fear of their life or liberty as a result of their race, their religion, their ethnicity, their political opinions. That is what a genuine refugee is. So take the Asians that were living in Uganda. Amin said, I'm going to kill them all. And the British government thought, do you know what? He's bonkers enough, he might just do this. So we did give refugee status to about 29,000 people who came here from Uganda. Interestingly, Roy, they've been, I think, the single most successful migrant group that's ever come to Britain. The number of them that have become millionaires and successful people is remarkable. However, I would argue this, Roy, and this may be controversial. The UNHCR say right at the moment there are 59 million people in the world who are displaced by war, by tribal conflict, or whatever it may be. Do we, Roy, accord those 59 million people the same kind of status as we would for Jewish people facing massacres or for Ugandan Asians facing massacres? Yes, their living circumstances are far from good, but I think, Roy, the mistake that Mr. Juncker made, and the mistake that was compounded by Chancellor Merkel, is we've now drawn the definitions of what is a refugee far too wide. That's my view, Roy. I don't know how you feel about that.
I think on the whole, across the world, we can't take responsibility for everybody, and we can't do that all. However, I think if we are knowingly going to be involved in some sort of conflict or support America in a conflict in Syria, then we need to take some responsibility for that.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Roy, the war's been horrendous anyway. It started back in 2011, and I think it would be reasonable to say that it was Assad who first used weapons against pretty defenceless protesters. 1/3 people have been killed. But if this now moves on to a military confrontation that is aimed specifically at regime change, then the likelihood is, Roy, that the number of the displaced millions from Syria will become even bigger. And that is a genuine concern and a genuine worry. And I suppose as far as Syria is concerned, I just feel, as I argued last night, that if you look at Iraq and if you look at Libya, I think our intervention made the situation worse, not better. And, I fear the same thing. Roy, I thank you very much indeed for your point. Your text, yes, the Swedish Prime Minister is right to make a U-turn. Whether he means it or not remains to be seen. I am not holding my breath, says BB. A multicultural society only works if there is a suitable means of integration which is comparable across countries. Can we say that the UK multicultural society is as integrated as Middle Eastern countries? That comes from Ollie in Basingstoke. Well, Ollie, you can read that whichever way you want. Nigel, I don't really care if people want to call me racist or not, but I don't really like multiculturalism, as different cultures together don't really work. We have too many people here now, says Kathy in Southampton. So some pretty strong views on both sides of this, and actually some pretty strong words. A tweet, Nigel, horse, door, bolt. That comes from Beachcomber, and that's in reference to the Swedish Prime Minister now saying this. And I've got another tweet here, just wondering what the EU strategy is for Syria, or doesn't it have one, asked Tom Babel. I don't think the EU yet has a policy for Syria. Certainly at the time of Libya, I sat in the European Parliament and I listened to the leader of the Greens, one Daniel Cohn-Bendit, famous for the 1968 Paris riots, and Mr. Guy Verhofstadt, who's appeared a bit on LBC this year and is the European Parliament's chief negotiator, and they were frothing at the mouth. They were desperate for the EU to launch bombing missions on Gaddafi, but to do it in the name of the European Union. They want a militarised European Union, they want an expanded European Union, and they want the European Union. They don't want France to drop bombs or Britain to drop bombs, they wanted the European Union to drop bombs. So, at the moment, they haven't got the military capability to do much about Syria, and I would say, thank goodness for that. I wonder what Giles in New Malden makes of the dramatic U-turn by the Swedish Prime Minister. Good evening, Giles.
Evening, Nigel. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. Well, I think he's incredibly well-meaning. I think he means what he's saying, but he's going to have a huge problem when it comes to bringing in migrants and refugee children. Now, it's been well documented that undocumented children, migrant children and refugee children coming to Sweden will be accepted without papers under the premise that they look under the age of 40 years old.
Yeah.
Now, if they're going to continue doing that, because obviously they have a duty to bring in children first, and I believe that's the case for many countries in Europe, they're going to continue bringing in people who might have ulterior motives.
Yes, I mean, we've had problems here, Giles, with this, haven't we? I mean, there's quite a few of these child migrants that came to Britain that looked a bit like prop forwards to me. Clearly were well over 25, let alone anything else. Yeah, I mean, that is a problem. That is a very difficult problem. You know, maybe the argument, Giles, is that what we should do is be giving more people more help that are displaced, whether they're in Turkey or whatever it is. And I'm not advocating foreign aid. I'm advocating genuine humanitarian aid. Maybe that's the answer, Giles.
I mean, if you look at the amount of air-conditioned tents that are in Saudi Arabia that could house many thousands of refugees.
Now, this is interesting, Giles, isn't it? Because Saudi Arabia have refused to take a single migrant from the Syrian conflict. Not one. Despite the vast wealth of the House of Saud and everything else, not one, because, and I quote, they worried that migrants coming into Saudi Arabia would change the structure of their society. But they are prepared to fund the building of 200 mosques in Germany. Interesting, isn't it? Giles, thank you very much for your call. James says, do you stop helping those in need when you fear for yourself? James, I think that people right across Europe are increasingly fearful and worried that through our compassion we may be letting very bad people come into our country. And James, you know, I mean, if you were sitting in the Netherlands tonight and you'd heard this news, that there are 8,000 people have been rejected and that the government have got no idea whether even a single one of them has left, would you be concerned? I think a little bit you would be. Simon says, end of the day, if it's not stopped, more innocent people will die because no one truly knows each other. Well, that is partly to do with division, I mean, and I'd agree with that. Pat says, the Gulf states and Saudi Arabia haven't taken a single refugee. You're right, Pat. What hypocrites they are. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 7:45.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Clive Bull.
Jeremy Corbyn pledges to tackle late payments, which he says is pushing small firms to the brink. Is he right that this problem is a national scandal?
Clive Bull on LBC.
Here at the Claims Guys, we'd like to offer this assurance to anyone worried by the deadline on PPI claims. There is still time to make your claim. Our experts will work fast to discover if you were ever sold PPI. And once we've completed your free PPI check, you can then pursue your own claim or let us do it for you. It's your choice. Even if you can't find any paperwork, just text the word EASY to 60777 and let the Claims Guys do the rest. Text EASY to 60777 now.
The Claims Guys. Starvation is a reality across East Africa. Donate to the DEC appeal. Go online or text radio to 70000 to give £5. Don't delay.
Finally, it's spring. The days are getting longer. Time to gather friends and fire up the barbecue. Get your spring off to the perfect start with Weber. From the 18th of March until the 17th of April, buy a revolutionary Weber Genesis 2 gas barbecue, register it online, and get an iGrill 3 digital Bluetooth thermometer for free. Serving excellent food has never been easier. Visit Weber.com for more information. Weber, for life.
The Global Academy in Hayes is a state school for 14 to 19-year-olds interested in a media career. Our next open day is on the 26th of April. Register now at globalacademy.com.
Welcome to London's exquisite Indian dining experience, Marla Restaurant. The finest North Indian cuisine in the most charming setting. Find us in the heart of one of London's divine hidden gems, St Catherine's Dock. Marla Restaurant. Visit us in St Catherine's Dock or go to marlarestaurant.co.uk.
Marla. Discover a jewel in London's secret paradise.
I don't know who you are or what your business does, but if you're looking for a better utilities deal, we will find you one. We have a very particular set of skills acquired over long careers, skills that make us a nightmare for traditional business water suppliers. Go to utilitywise.com/water and that'll be the end of it. But if you don't, we will find you and we will help you save up to 25% on your utility bills. Savings based on water plus gas or electricity combined.
Are you confused about PPI? At PPI Hotline, we want to give you the facts. There is absolutely every reason to check you had PPI. Even if you think you never have, we can help you find out, as you could be owed thousands. And now there's a deadline. We just need the name of the bank you've had loans or credit cards with, and we'll check for free. So find out now if you're owed by texting WIN to 83222.
PPI Hotline. Text WIN to 83222.
Leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag #FarageOnLBC.
Liberal Sweden, who've taken more people pro rata than any other country in the world as refugees, migrants, in over the course of the last 10 years, have U-turned. And the Prime Minister says mass immigration to their country is over. And I'm asking, is that the right thing to do? I'm also asking, do we actually believe him? Andrew, in Gospel Oak, do you believe him?
No, sir. It's a token gesture. And all you have to do is look at us, a country who has managed reasonably well to integrate our immigrants into our general sector, and then take a look at the court lists at the Old Bailey and see how many people are still going down there under the Prevention of Terrorism Acts and are being sent to prison. We've got off pretty lightly compared to what I think is going to happen to Sweden.
Is that simply because of numbers, Andrew?
Yeah, no doubt. But also, I think we as the most liberal country in the world are very good at integrating people into our fabric. We've got a long history of doing this, and I think we do it pretty successfully because we are very liberal. We're so liberal, in fact, that we managed to police this, and we have people informing on their own communities sometimes, thankfully.
Well, that's a good thing, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, if that's happening, Andrew, that is a good thing. Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think, do you know, when I first went to the European Parliament back in 1999, one of the things that struck me was, and it's your point, Andrew, that actually we had the best levels of integration of immigrant communities within our society of any country in Europe, and the lowest and least forms of intolerance. I saw a lot more of it in Brussels and Strasbourg than I'd ever seen in the United Kingdom. I do think, Andrew, even here, though, that's been a little bit stretched over the course of the last 20 years, don't you?
Yes, I'd agree with you, Mr. Farage. But what do you have to say to people who openly call you a racist?
Oh, gosh.
Even when they call you a racist on air.
Well, I'm not allowed to swear, you see, because if I swear, Andrew, LBC will fire me. So I have to bite my... it's interesting, isn't it? We had that chap on earlier, and he was insisting on dishing out these labels. So I asked him straight, why are you calling her that? Why are you calling me that? And you know what? Answer, there came none. And so I think that's really the answer to your question, Andrew, is I throw it back at them and ask them for some evidence, and they never, ever seem to have any. Andrew, I thank you very much indeed for your call. I'm going next to Sadiq, who's calling from Ilford. Good evening, Sadiq.
Good evening, Nigel. Nigel, just a few minutes ago, and nothing new for you, to be honest, perfectly honest, is you told an absolute blatant whopper.
Oh, gosh. I'm looking forward to this. Right, what did I do?
Yeah. You said Saudi Arabia have taken not a single refugee from Syria. And the Gulf states haven't. And when in fact just a cursory bit of research will tell you that they've taken over 2 million
from where?
Refugees from Syria around there. And
when?
The fact is that they don't call them refugees, Nigel.
Right.
They call them citizens in Saudi Arabia, so to not make them feel inferior. So, and you know that for a fact, Nigel, whatever. But you keep telling these whopping lies because your audience laps it up.
So it's really is utterly fascinating because you are.
And it's just like your bus. It's just like your, your queue. Getting into the country during the referendum that you used.
Absolutely.
And you used all those brown faces and whatever, have you? So, Nigel...
Well, what should I have done?
Your audience will lap it up.
What should I have done? Should I have pretended that wasn't happening? Should I have ignored it? I mean, what I was talking about...
Well, address the lie first, Nigel. Address the lie first.
Sadiq,
lie first.
I am not aware.
Just a cursory.
They have not taken. They have not taken. I know, and you'd find out, Sadiq, that actually the Saudi Arabian regime have said we are not taking any refugees from
Nigel,
Syria.
They don't call them refugees. That's the difference, Nigel.
And the same goes. The same goes for half. And the same goes.
Nigel, address
no lie at all. They've taken not a single refugee. And back to your point.
Well, to the audience, please go and do your research because Nigel is lying once more.
Oh, I've been saying this now. I've been saying this for a long, long time, and I think I'm right and you're wrong. But it's been great fun, Sadiq. And let me just answer the last point you made. You know, that poster showing the madness that was happening in Europe as a result of the failed policies of Juncker and Merkel is exactly... Well, I could have whitened them out, couldn't I? So are you suggesting that I change the colour of people's faces? Is that really what you're suggesting?
Well, Nigel, you see what it is...
You don't like the truth, do you? You don't like the truth. You don't like the truth, do you? The fact is... So your lie about Saudi Arabia... So your lie about Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states... So tell me, what is your source for this? What is your source for this? Sorry? What is your source for this? Just do a cursory search on research. And the Saudi Arabian Sadiq, Saudi Arabian ambassador himself made the speech. I think this is fake. I think this is fake news, Sadiq. But
really?
it's been fun.
Nigel, your middle name is fake. Your middle name is fake.
Well, I tell you what. I've been getting away with it for a long time then, haven't I? I must be quite good at it, really, mustn't I? Sadiq, thank you for that charming, fascinating, factual call. Chris in Colchester. There's been a U-turn in Sweden. Is he right? Does he mean it?
Well, I would take it with a pinch of salt. I don't think he's right. I don't believe that he's telling the truth. No, all our mainstream politicians lie like this. But also, I think we need to stop. It's all well and good saying, should we take refugees? We need to stop creating refugees. This has all been done by action. I mean, just that attack today, the attack by the guy in Uzbekistan, I'm sure they're a Western-backed brutal regime in there, aren't they?
Well, yes. I mean that's obviously true. But when you say we've got to stop the refugee flows, do you mean fewer wars in the Middle East, Chris? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, this is why people. This is why they're fleeing their homes because we're creating carnage in Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq.
If we get rid of Assad, who's to say that the people that take over will be any better than Assad? They might be even worse. And
it'll be Al Qaeda and Al Nusra. They're the ones he's fighting against. And next it'll be Yemen. They'll be coming from Yemen because Saudi Arabia are attacking Yemen.
Yeah,
and there's a massive humanitarian.
No, Chris, I do agree with you. We have caused a huge number of problems. I thank you for your call. The Saudi Arabian Independent in September 2016 said that Saudi Arabia has issued residency permits for 100,000 Syrians, though it has not formally accepted anyone actually classed as a refugee. So, to begin with, Sadiq, I don't know where you got your figure of 2 million from. I mean, that was fake news. But the important thing is, clearly, they've taken 100,000 middle-class people who've got lots of money, who've gone in to Saudi Arabia, are able to buy properties, etc. They haven't taken anyone poor. They haven't taken anyone that's cold or is suffering. And I'm going to go to Yola in Dulwich. Yola, good evening. U-turn. U-turn.
Hello.
Is it genuine? Hello. Is it genuine?
My question is kind of different, because I wonder, will those already in Europe or in Sweden be able to bring their families? So if so, there could be another 5 million.
Well, I mean, Sweden's population is just over 9 million, and it's gone up 1 million in the last 15 years, and over 2/3 of that is directly attributable to people that have come in. And Yola, you're right. If those people are all given the rights of family reunion all over the world, then Swedish society would be completely skewed by it. So Yola, I don't think Swedish policymakers really thought any of this through. The point you raise is a very good one and a very, very valid one. And my final thought on all of this is, whether it's David Cameron telling us numbers are going to be reduced, whether it's Theresa May making grand speeches, whether it's the Prime Minister of Sweden doing a dramatic U-turn, whether it's the EPP group in the European Parliament backing the banning of face veils, whether it's Angela Merkel saying that everybody needs to be more deeply integrated and respect the rule of law in Germany, I have to tell you, I don't believe a single word of it for any of them. And before they start U-turning and pretending they're going to change policy, why don't they just stand up and apologise for the terrible mistakes they've made over the course of the last few years? I'm waiting. I'm not holding my breath, though. You've been listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'm back tomorrow evening from 7. Coming up at 10, it's Ian Collins. But up next, it's Clive Bull, who will have the latest on that breaking news.
Thank you, Nigel.